You might want to start weaning yourself off of single-use plastics. Environment Canada and Health Canada released a report today on the impact of plastic pollution. It puts the government on track to implement a full ban. Some businesses are getting a jump on it. As of midnight tonight, the grocery chain Sobeys is ending the use of plastic bags. So what would a full ban look like? Salima Shivji joins us now. Hey, Salima, what did this report tell us?
So basically, this is a mandated scientific assessment that the government needed to do to get in place and move forward on their single-use plastics ban, be able to formulate what they want to have banned. So this has compiled all of the science that we know about the effects of plastic on the environment and on health. So more broad strokes. This is science that we have heard before. It shows that only 9% of plastics are recycled in Canada, while 86% end up sitting in landfills. So obviously a big issue for the environment. Some of that plastic waste also is released directly into the environment, about 1%. And the report does show that single-use plastics often end up on the shorelines, right, as you've heard, and is of harm to many animals. So there's some specific concrete examples, you know, a bird that was found with a plastic bottle cap in its mouth that was blocking the digestive tract. That bird died. You know, a sea turtle who had was emaciated and losing a lot of weight, and basically there were a lot of plastic objects found in the turtle. Ended up recovering. But the report does say that we do need more studies on the effects on humans for microplastics, so those tiny little plastics that don't get broken down. But for macroplastics, the scientists say that it's clear. It does harm animals, it harms the environment, and there is movement that can be done. Now, the scientists, when asked, don't talk about what they would recommend, what they would like to see as part of the single-use plastics ban, so they don't talk specifically about will this be plastic bags or straws. But the science that is compiled hints in that direction. So think about plastic bags, plastic straws, cutlery as well, and that was echoed by the Environment Minister today.
Yeah, so what is the government saying? I mean, I remember the announcement that they intended to do something like this. There wasn't really a set timeline for when it would kick in. What do you know about that?
Yeah, that's the thing. They talked about 2021, but they are going through a process, and that process has to be done in a certain way. So they do need this scientific review. They needed this report in order to move forward. So this is a first step to move forward. This means that they can actually change the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. They don't need to table legislation and negotiate with other parties in a minority. They can make regulatory changes with the Protection Act, but they needed the science in order to make that step. The NDP is saying that this process is too slow, that it should go faster. We do not need more studies, but the Liberals are countering that, saying this is the proper procedure. The report does need to be up online for 3 months with public comment. There will have to be public consultations as well. And the Environment Minister is promising to stick to that date that the government set last year, 2021. He says there needs to be an adaptation process, but Jonathan Wilkinson also thinks that there won't be much pushback from industry.
We need to work through this. This is one of the reasons why it will take to 2021, is to talk about the rate of phasing in the changes and to ensure that there are alternatives that are available. But I would tell you that most companies are in the same place that Canadians are, which is they feel like we're too slow. They feel like their governments are not acting quickly enough on something that is very clearly a problem.
So not quickly enough, but we will have to wait a little bit longer for the specific products that will be part of the single-use plastics ban. Wilkinson is saying perhaps June or maybe this fall.
All right. Thank you very much, Salima. Appreciate the update. The CBC's Salima Shivji. The Power Panel has been listening in as Salima gave us those details. Kathleen, David, Andrew, and Rachel. David, why don't I start with you? What is the NDP's criticism fair here? Should this be going faster? What do you think?
Well, I don't know, to be honest. I know my colleague has a strong point of view. I'm not as well versed in the science. I just see the sad pictures on social media of the animals, and I'm moved to action by those things. But maybe I should be more evidence-based, as Andrew will point out to me. I do know that it's sort of mixed politics, and I don't know really how it falls down. It certainly didn't work well for Selina Meyer when she tried it in Veep.
The greatest show ever.
The most accurate show about politics on TV.
And everybody who's ever worked in politics has actually said that to me as a side note. Yeah.
But, you know, it is the case that you're going to take convenience away from people. And if modern life has shown us anything, it's that as human beings, we value convenience over any other thing. And so by inconveniencing people, they will be annoying them. It's also the case, and I know this from years and years of public opinion research on the environment, that while climate change gets all the oxygen and attention in the environment, the most important environmental issue for most Canadians is waste and garbage disposal and management of waste in our society. And so to that extent, it probably plays pretty well with people. I think I'm fine with it, I'm good with it, and I think it's by and large probably going to be good politics.
What do you think, Andrew? Is it going to be good politics?
Well, it's sloppy science, and obviously people are getting sucked in by some pretty speedy spin on the part of what's coming out of this report. I mean, let's remember the news here is not that 86% is going to landfill. It is that 1% of this, all those bottle caps that end up in beaks and turtles, is from 1% of the plastic not being appropriately disposed of. This is a problem with the lack of recycling in this country. It is a problem with us not having appropriate access to garbage disposal in our parks. There are very simple conservation issues that can be undertaken to deal with this, but instead we've made it into an issue about the environment, and even then it's being conflated as to whether this is actually addressing climate change, or is this addressing public health, or is this addressing the shoreline, without being clear about what exactly it's attempting to do. But David's right, there's these tug of the heartstring pictures, because God forbid if I don't recycle my plastic, some bird's going to swoop in and swallow it and get eaten by a whale and die. And
You do not sound like a guy that cuts up your can holders.
I do all of that, and in fact, I've got the I have the recyclable bags. I have recyclable bags, so I don't even have to put my apples in plastic bags. Which, by the way, I just want to say, no, I'm not. But look, if we're going to buy into the science, the Europeans have studied this extensively, and the other piece that they find is actually the replacement products that we're about to force people to use are in many ways worse for the environment than what we are currently using in terms of their full life cycle. And I think that this is the piece where I get frustrated when we get conflating what is happening scientifically with what the science points us to as the problem, and what frankly, those of us in the chattering classes like to talk about in terms of, making sure that we're all big environmentalists.
So what's the solution, though? Not banning plastic and instead better enforcing recycling?
Absolutely.
policies?
Better enforcing recycling would be a big part. I mean, a lot of Canadians don't have access to recycling of plastics. And we've seen, in fact, Toronto's a great example of, this is a very environmentally conscious city. We don't recycle black plastic in this city, not because we can't recycle it, but because there's no market for it. So we're told to throw it out into our bins. These are political choices based around how we've not made an investment in the recycling infrastructure of the country. If we really want to start addressing those issues, that's where the money should go. And I will give credit to the Ontario Tories for this. At least they have put in place, and I don't know if it's a terribly effective strategy, but they have at least put in place a strategy that is looking at how to improve the recycling aspects in this province. That's a better place for us to focus our attention than on this question of what happens to 1% of our plastics, banning 100% to deal with 1% that's not properly.
I can tell you I had no idea you would feel so passionately about this. It's a revelation. Kathleen,
Neither did I before the show started, but I got a quick lesson.
Yeah, Kathleen, what do you think?
Well, I heard an interview just the other day with somebody from the plastics industry who was making the argument that that a lot of these plastics are single use anyway, so that there are lots of ways to make them more than single use. So that's sort of the argument we're hearing from them. But I would say when we talk about industry, so if we're talking about different chains that are implementing bans on plastic bags, they're doing that because they know that, that the public will is there. I understand that it's an inconvenience for some people and people will grumble, but largely I think those images that David was referring to, and Andrew, I think those are burned in people's minds now when they think about plastics and they see the damage that can be done, notwithstanding maybe the lack of detail in terms of what the scientific conclusions are. But I think people are motivated by emotion. They're motivated by how it makes them feel. And I think they will generally just feel like they're doing something in a space where a lot of people feel powerless.
Yeah, we've seen some this isn't without precedent. We've seen some municipalities already in this country do that. Rachel, what do you think?
Yeah, what a bunch of cynics. So I think the objective...
The optimist among us here, Rachel, yes.
Well, look, I love the idea. Let me just say, I love the idea of reducing significantly our use of single-use plastics. We may not have all of the science around microplastics, but I think there's a real sense that maybe those aren't so great for us either. And the fact they've made their way into our food chain is not a good thing. So I think the fact that this scientific report has been produced so quickly. I don't know why they're calling it slow. It's been 6 months. If only we could get an environmental assessment of a major revenue-generating project that quickly.
Full circle.
It certainly won't. Yes, back to the tech project. Environmental assessments certainly don't come in 6 months for anything else. So I'm glad that this, science report has been produced so quickly. Maybe it will provide the basis. I assume it will provide the basis for the government to start saying, look, here are the products we're going to start reducing or banning use of in conjunction with industry. Look, my fellow panelists are expressing a lot of concern that there might not be alternate options in some cases. That's certainly not been a discussion around home heating fuel or fuel for vehicles, for instance. When we're talking about a carbon tax, there are no easy other alternatives there either. And yet we have chosen to add an additional tax to those. So look, I think whatever measures can be taken to reduce the use of single-use plastics, to get them out of our system entirely, while protecting consumer safety, while protecting health and product safety, it's a great thing.
And I do appreciate Rachel's view on this, because it is very consistent. I mean, when the Tories came in and banned, as you'll remember, incandescent light bulbs, requiring us all to go over to CFC bulbs, which, as it turned out, contained mercury, which is not in any way friendly for the environment. Did that without really understanding the science, but did this as a means to allow us to continue to feel good about what we're doing in terms of pumping out all that extra CO2 into the air through our other projects.
Well,
there is a degree of consistency here.
Always,
I mean, I just think we should stop hiding behind the science. If we're going to argue there's a science argument on one side, we have to be consistent and look at the science on both sides of this, of these two issues, both in terms of what's happening in the energy sector and then what's happening in the plastic sector. And the science in the plastic sector is not as clean as what the spin is.
I'm the only person here speaking for the turtles.
Yeah, thank goodness that you are. Someone
I'm going to pull back in now.
Too bad we just don't have an image right now of the turtle up. But thank you, everyone. Thanks to our power panel this evening, David Hurley, Rachel Curran, Andrew Thompson, and Kathleen Petty. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.